What is up, everybody, and welcome back once again to the CHGO Sky Show presented by All City Sports Network and the CHGO Sports, and as always presented by CD1 Price Cleaners. Fast service, transparent service, and always one low price all the time. Check out cd1.com/CHGO for a pickup or delivery coupon, and you can get dressed in your Sunday best all spring long. As I know some of you are aware, Easter and Passover are coming up, so you're going to need those clothes clean. We are on the show, as always, with the man, the myth, the legend, Stephen Garner at StateUS.3. Stephen, how you doing, man?
Man, blessed and just happy to be here, my man. How you doing? How you living?
Well, it's March Madness, so you see your boy taking it back to basketball band. I got the mouthpiece out to practice for a little bit. Got the trombone in pieces right here. You see it. I only stopped because my girlfriend's cat woke up from her nap immediately and gave me the look like, who is doing this right now? And I want you to stop immediately.
I wouldn't want to smoke with that either, honestly. So,
and I'll tell you, she sleeps through everything. So just to see that look on her face was hilarious. I'll tell you that. It is March Madness, very much so right now, and I think for a weekend that did not have a lot of upsets, not only did we as Sky viewers and Sky fans and Sky media personnel get a lot to talk about, but basketball fans got a lot to talk about with the NCAA tournament. But we'll start with our picks. As always, like and subscribe to CHGO Sports on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever podcasts are sold and listened to, and check out CHGO Sports and get yourself a diehard subscription, so you can be privy not just to conversations and discussions like this, but those sweet, sweet Chicago Sky, CHGO Sky merch and CHGO Sports merch. All right, man, let's kick it off. There were some barn burners in this tournament, and Rikia Jackson, the presumptive Sky number 3 pick, was right in the middle of it, going down to the wire in a very, very good game against NC State. And I thought she put on a show both games last weekend, and kept up the form that she's had over the last month, going back to the SEC tournament.
Yeah, she's I think the quickest way to put it without being too long-winded, she's just WNBA ready, and composure and the ability to just kind of dictate off of her stature to kind of take what the defense gives her in some context and use that against what they're trying to show in terms of getting the ball out of her hands or taking away some of the looks that she gets from certain spots on the floor. She really showcased a level of composure that I feel like is going to translate extremely well to the W level, especially when she's on a team that is, like I mentioned in the last episode, is going to have some pieces that can do some of the things that she brings to the table in terms of the extra attention she's garnering from a defense and present her with opportunities to play off of those advantages rather than always being the table setter for those. So she was just really impressive last weekend. I'm curious, what were your thoughts on Rikia's performances?
About the same as yours, but I think it's really highlighted in the way that she was able to score throughout the game. In a game that Tennessee was close to, was close in, but lost the handle on things, and we're trying to just come back to get a tie, forge a lead in the second half. She had, in that way, what I would call a kind of a quiet 33 after the first quarter, because she had double digits in the first quarter,
14.
hit both of the 14 points, hit 2 threes in that quarter. But NC State, through their athleticism, a nice mix of athleticism and length. And if we get a chance at the end, I want to talk about some prospective 2025 picks that the Sky might have a shot at that are on the NC State roster. But she was able to muscle through contact when the Wolfpack was trying to keep the ball out of her hands, put 2 on her when she got the ball in the post, and finish at times through very adversarial defense. And even though she didn't get another 3 after the first quarter, she had another look at one. She was able to knock down some mid-range jumpers. And it's exactly as you said, she's the most WNBA-ready player of the Sky draft prospects that I think were available. Sabrina Merchant, as we'll get to later in the show, had some things to say about that. But just watching her game, the only thing that I could see that she could work on, and I think will be the Sky the best fit for her, is her defense.
Yeah, I think naturally with most players, the thing is going to be the toughest to adjust to is the defensive end of the floor. And that's before anything else, getting used to the whistle or lack thereof at times in the W. And getting acclimated to that, and then the speed at which and the skill at which players are playing with on the W level as well. Being able to defend in those multiple contexts, being able to sustain on that end of the floor while also bringing forth the production or offense that your team is obviously going to need from you as a top end pick as well. I think those little kind of inner development dynamics that are to come from Rikia or any player is going to be a top 5, top 6 pick in the draft. It's going to be important as far as a lens to gauge their play from. But I think, like you mentioned at the top, she's arguably the most, in terms of stature, W ready player that we have to look at. And I think, again, the context of the sky, but also the context of the sky for her, but also how she fits in the context that the sky already have in place. It's a match made in terms of heaven, especially looking at her coming not necessarily in place of Kalia Copper, because you don't just replace a finals MVP, but to be the next player that's kind of in that same spot that she was in, to bring some of those things, being a little bit taller, being a little bit bigger in terms of stature, giving a different type of look and feel to things. I think it's important. And I would really like to see her, if she's available at that third pick, for the Sky to make that bet on her and for them to show that it's a good one for them as well.
I'm glad you brought up replacing that scoring, because that is something that I was thinking about in the lead up to this show. When you have defensive oriented teams, as we're expecting from a Teresa Weatherspoon led team, some of the things that can get lost is offense and kind of going more than just simple plays or having one focal point on offense. The thing that always comes to mind for me as a Chicagoan is those Tom Thibodeau, Derrick Rose Chicago Bulls, that at times their best offense was either Rose on an ISO or an offensive rebound. And while I don't think that the Sky are that, you're still making up or trying to make up for the loss of Kalia Copper, who can on any given night is looking for 16 points. That's about 16 points there. Courtney Williams, who by points and assists would probably generate another 16 on a regular night. And Alana Smith, who, while not the most consistent or double-digit scorer, is both giving you points on the offensive end and converting defense to points at the other end. So you have to have somebody who hits the ground running with 10 plus points a night. You just have to have that.
Yeah, and I think that's important in process for the team, but also for her. And kind of looking at even a little bit more through that lens of that game against North Carolina State. Though they did lose that game, I talked about the composure at the beginning of my thoughts of her performance over this past week or two since we last podcasted. They were throwing switches at her. They were throwing double teams at her. They were showing extra help from below the block, sometimes from the nail. Like, they were cycling through multiple different types of looks from the different spots on the floor that she catches the ball from. And she was just, like you said, picking it apart with her drives, absorbing the contact, dictating with that contact to get to the spot where she wanted to get to, and playing through it ultimately to finish at the cup. Also finding her teammates as well off of that. I think it's one thing to process the different types of help and the different types of coverages that you're seeing to score for yourself. That's obviously important, because that's how you keep teams in a position of where they want to concede something to you in terms of their defensive capital. But I think the real growth comes from when you're able to counter that. Obviously, she can do it for herself. That's without question a bona fide scorer. That next level, and we're going to see how that translates to the W level, but we already have seen it, especially in this last season for her, translate and pick up in multiple matchups. It's countering that defense she's seeing with those skip passes, with passes to teammates that are cutting, anticipating those windows and anticipating where the general help is coming from, and just executing consistently over and over, being that type of pressure point that the Sky are ultimately going to need her to be should she land here. And I think, again, this past two games in particular, in addition to the game against South Carolina in the conference tournament, I think that's 3 back-to-back games that show a great template for the type of player she is, the level of competition she brings, because they were underdogs in pretty much 2 of those last 3 games that we saw them play. And, we saw what they did. One came down to a buzzer beater, and the other one saw them come back with a valiant effort ultimately to end the season. Nonetheless, it would be remiss if we didn't mention that. the competitive piece, because everything Teresa Witherspoon starts and finishes with being competitive. So she fits right into that culture context as well as everything on the court.
Yeah, Stephen, can we throw that graphic up and talk to our producer? Shout out Stephen Nicholas, having him on the show today. These are Rikia Jackson's last 4 games, and I think it's telling exactly to your point. She is putting up these kinds of numbers against, quote unquote, lesser competition, if you can say any team that finds himself in the final 64 lesser, talking about that game against Green Bay, or Alabama, who is a good team but not an SEC powerhouse, as well as the number 1 team in the country and a top 15 team in the country. And in fact, she had a great game against NC State. And over those 4 games, not only was she putting up those kinds of numbers, she was doing it very efficiently. Of the 71 field goals she attempted in these 4 games, she put in 51 of them. 51 over 71. That's over 60%. And not to detract, she was 5 for 10 from behind the arc and only missed 3 free throws in that span of time as well. I think what I really like about Rikia Jackson is that she has facets to her game that she's not explored yet. That 3-point shot, she hasn't fully explored it yet. Even, being able to draw more fouls, draw more contact, she hasn't fully explored that yet. I think she'll develop moves both to get herself free at the 3-point line and to engage with and draw that contact in the mid-range, as well as finishing at the rim, that make her the best possible prospect. So, Sky fans, I'm glad you're watching, because we're not going to talk about Rikia Jackson anymore until draft night. She's locked in at number 3, unless something catastrophic happens. You could expect to see her at Wintrust Arena in this coming season, right? It's that easy. It's that easy. We said it to Jeff and Teaspoon's ears. That's it, right? That's going to be it.
I think the context that matters most in terms of looking at where Rikia is and where Kyle was before she ultimately left. I think it's important to note that not just the team, but also Jeff Pagliocca has experience, has depths of experience working with a player of that caliber, of that ilk in terms of being a slasher. So I think that experience, obviously he's not the direct skill development person, but just having contact with Kalia and, having gone through those things with her to expedite her skill development, ultimately getting her to the borderline MVP caliber player that she is now. I think that all bodes well for just the foundation that's already set before Rikia even touches down in Chicago, should she end up being drafted here. And I think all of that just bodes well in terms of where they're trying to get to as a team and where they're trying to get through her if she is the player they ultimately do select.
Now, I want to go to the number 8 pick, because I think that's where these last weekend's matchups might have affected the Sky's boards just a touch. Georgia Amore and Virginia Tech had a heartbreaking loss. It was a hell of a game against Baylor. And I think some more people who might be on those 2025, 26 draft boards were playing in that game, talking about Sarah Andrews on Baylor and not Zaya Jane. Now the name escapes me right now. Number 11 on Baylor. I'm sorry, I lost her name.
Yeah, the guard. Yeah. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but yes, another dog.
I know that she looked like she fit the mold. That's exactly why she jumped off the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But Georgia Amore actually had a rough couple of weeks both in the conference tournament and then in those 2 games over the weekend. 9 points, 1 board, and 4 assists in the preceding game, and then 18, 1 and 6 in the loss to Virginia Tech. And I believe she was only 2 of 10 from behind the arc, in that loss to Baylor. I think she was only 2 of 10, 3 of 10 from behind the arc against Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
Charisma Osborne looked good against Cal Baptist, 15, and 9, but was single digits across the board against Creighton, and Creighton's a quality team. But I think Charisma Osborne kind of over the last year, just the way that she's rebounded from that injury, her stock kind of fell to late first round, if that, or mid second round. And then our other favorite, Alyssa Pili, she had two very, very good games, putting up 61 points in total, and the 35-point effort against what. I'm old, man.
Yeah, in the most recent game.
It's been a lot of basketball, as you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think about what you saw from Amor, Osborne, and Pili, and anybody else that the Sky might be considering at number 8?
Yeah, for Amor, it was definitely tough sledding in terms of the bar that she set for production and for impact on the game. I do feel like the impact part was not lost because it was a lot of the things that she was somewhat struggling with efficiency wise that she usually doesn't just came from her seeing more attention. And obviously the more detailed scouting reports that come with playing in the national tournament versus regular season play kind of lend itself more to teams saying, okay, we're saying absolutely no to a couple of the things that we know make you a great player. You got to figure out another route, another avenue to kind of being the spearhead of your team. So it was kind of a little bit of back and forth in terms of chess with that. She was still able to find little pockets where she was able to have that stamp. It just wasn't as resounding as we're typically accustomed to seeing from her. And I mean, as a smaller guard, especially on the national tournament level, those things get a little bit more cumbersome in addition to the context of scouting reports that I brought up. So not necessarily detracted at all from the performances from Georgia. But I do think there's more growth to be had there with her. And then if I'm looking at one other, I just look at Alyssa Pili. I mean, it's just the abundance of offense that she brings. Play off of the pop for the shot. Play off of the pop to attack a closeout. Play off of the pop to connect into a dribble handoff with a teammate that nets a switch. Now she's able to play post up in isolation off of that switch with a guard. And just repeating these things over and over. Solid screen into a roll, short roll, kick it to the backside, play in the post, isolation, bring it up in transition, grab an offensive rebound and go back up. I mean, like this, just spacing and creating driving lanes for her teammates because they don't want to leave her because she's obviously has the propensity of a prolific shooter from deep, especially off the catch. Like all of these little things just add up into just a puzzle piece to solve. Because you coverage wise, you can't leave her. And at the same time, because her usage and how Utah played to it and having the ball in her hands often to make decisions to connect to connect to her teammates in the post and then cut, screen away, like all of those little things. Alyssa is just she's a problem. And I think there's a lot of transferable skills and transferable dynamics that will follow with her to the W. Obviously, there's going to be an adjustment period. But a handful of those things, particularly the IQ that she has, it's not something that's going to leave. Yes, there's going to be a integration period where she's going to have to ramp up because of the processing speed that'll need to just kind of see an uptick on the W level. But as a foundation, I mean, there's everything that she does on offense is likely going to translate to the W. So just kind of looking at those things, I really like the prospect of Alyssa Pili. Obviously, the defensive side, there's things that are going to have to be worked through, but she could be insulated extremely well with a lot of the things that the Sky already have in-house.
Yeah, you look at her last month of play, went 1 for 9 against Washington in the conference tournament. Before the conference tournament, that was their last game, Utah's last game of conference play before the tournament. Since then, 37 of 67 from the floor, 42% from beyond the arc. And she averaged just under 29 minutes for the season. She played over 32 minutes or more in each game in the conference tournament and the NCAA tournament. And that last game, by virtue of it being the women's tournament, was on Gonzaga's floor. And Utah got out to a good lead. And the only other starter who was in double figures for them was McQueen. This is somebody who is the focal point of pretty much every other team's defensive plan. She has to be. And yet, she still is the centerpiece of Utah's offense because she has to be. I think we can't understate that. We can't overstate that really enough, that it's so difficult to stay in that spotlight when you know that teams are going to focus on you, and that you still have to be the screener. You still have to get a touch. You still have to be somebody who is getting on the block down low, knowing that you're going to get doubled. And what really stood out to me, not only just her ability to score, but staying on the floor, getting up and down the floor, and her footwork when she got those post touches. She's able to get that ball, get it up quick, or make moves to get to her spot on the block down low. I think it's interesting after we come back from this break that some people don't necessarily have Alyssa Pilley not only as the Sky's pick at number 8, but not even in the first round. So I definitely want to discuss that. But first, a word once again from CD1 Price Cleaners. Again, it's the springtime season. If you're a younger listener, you got prom. If you're an older listener, you have adult prom because that's a thing now. You got Easter coming up this weekend. You have Passover coming up this weekend. And if you got to get your clothes dry cleaned, there's only one place to go, and that is CD1 Price Cleaners. Their prices are low. Their service is simple, transparent. They have a quick turnaround. You don't have to wait 2 or 3 days to get your clothes back, and they're not going to upcharge you for alterations or tailoring. And you can also bring in your own laundry from home, and they will wash it and fold it for you and get it back to you. Blankets, comforters, leather cleaning, your area rugs, so you can get your home nice for the second weekend of March Madness parties. And, of course, like we said, your dry cleaning suits, dresses, sweaters, the jerseys that Stevens got hanging up behind them. CD1 Price Cleaners can do all of that. So if you're listening to this ad, if you've seen any of our shows, visit chgo.cd1, that's CDONE, and you can pick from an in-store coupon or get an online pickup and delivery coupon. CD1 Price Cleaners, proud sponsor of not only this show, CHGO Sky, but CHGO Sports. Also want to talk about Coors Light, because there's nothing else that you'd rather have than clean, dry clean clothes, a nice spread for the second weekend of March Madness. And as the season comes up, as the season heats up, WNBA I'm talking about, you got to sometimes be able to relax and just chill. That's what I love to do when I pick up a nice cold Coors Light, whether it's a 12-pack in the cans where you get that silver bullet with the sky blue mountain so you know it's cold, or if I'm at the bar and I get one in the bottle, same label, same Blue Mountains, same silver bullet. Coors Light is my drink of choice when I'm up at Whiskey River, enjoying the game with Sky fans, whether I'm over at Little Joe's, my former place of employment, whether I'm sitting back at home on the couch like I am right now, when the Sky are on, the mountains are blue for me. So Coors Light, it is the best, perfect cold refreshment for the Sky this year. And you can get Coors Light delivered straight to your door using Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO-Dunk. That is CoorsLight.com/CHGO-Dunk. And you can get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. All right, man. You had this one up, and I appreciate everybody who's listening to us. Steven, we had that graphic up earlier because this concerns that the comment that we got from Black Rain 7920, because this concerns this segment. He said, take Angel, talking about Angel Reese. I would actually go to a game. Well, let's break that comment down. As I saw Steve, I saw your mouth and like, yeah, let's talk about that. First of all, go to games anyway, because it's good basketball. Secondly, Angel Reese you're not the only one who believes that the Sky should pick up Angel Reese. Sabrina Merchant of The Athletic, as Stephen, you found, had Angel going to the Sky at number 8. And here's this quote: she might have the highest motor of any player in this class, and she creates extra possessions with her rebounding and steals, always plays hard, has great leaping ability, especially her second jump, which should help her make the athletic transition to the WNBA. She'll have to become a more efficient scorer, but her year-to-year improvement in college suggests anything is possible. Shout out to Jay Billis, because he would have condensed that second clause in the second sentence to one of his favorite words, re-jump ability. I thought this was interesting just because it feels like Angel's draft stock has fallen over the last year or two, but I can't disagree with anything that Sabrina said.
Yeah, I can't say I disagree with anything she said either. I feel like Angel is a player that has there's a gravity to her, and she bears it, she weighs it extremely well. And I think that's something that will certainly translate to the W level. And I think in all of that leadership stuff that we're talking about, I think you put her in the context with a coach like Teresa Witherspoon, who's going to demand defense out of every player that's going to have any stake of claim in her rotation. You pair her with somebody like Angel Reese, who is defense first, second, and sometimes even third, depending on what the matchup is. That's a match made in heaven. And in addition to that, you know, our dubbing last season, from conversations with James Wade to us two talking on the podcast, was dogs, dogs, dogs. Guess what? Who's a bigger dog than Angel Reese in the draft? Like, I mean, I think all the players are dogs, don't get me wrong, but I think all the dogs bark a little differently. And Angel's bark is a little different, man. It rallies troops when she gets to doing her thing. And that's the thing with Angel. It's never until she's making plays and her impact is being felt, especially on the defensive side of the floor, that you see her get emotionally engaged in games. And now, in the context of LSU, now you see Haley Van Lith navigating screens galore, flattening out actions, keeping their defensive shell intact. And she's picking up the baton off of the leadership and the spark that's being provided from Angel. And then you look next to that, and this Amoro doing the exact same thing in her context defensively. And guess what? Flau'jae is doing the exact same thing. So she's a fire starter in terms of looking at how her energy infuses and invigorates her teammates to be their best selves over the course of a 40-minute game where there can be highs and lows. And there's just so much invaluable leadership that comes from that. I haven't even got to talking about the defensive versatility and all of the little minute skills that she has that are going to certainly translate well to the W level. But just at the surface level, I think that leadership and that fire that she has is very much something that would catch the eye of Teresa Witherspoon if you detach names from players and you just looked at the templates for what they have at their foundation. And naturally, you add everything else that she brings in terms of getting more eyes on women's basketball, inspiring young girls. You know, those things all add up. So I think she would certainly fit into the context of the Sky, and I think the Sky context would certainly fit for her as well.
That's definitely true. Angel has been a presence in the game over the last 2 years. She had that fantastic ad with her and Flau'jae for, was it Amazon? That kind of back to school ad last year. And I loved that. I loved seeing her be able not just to take advantage of that NIL facet of college basketball, college sports now, but that she did not just wait back after LSU's win in the championship over Iowa and everything that came with that. I think she parlayed that into something very positive. And I do agree with you. I think that she has dog mentality. She has to. You don't average double digits in rebounds in the SEC without being somebody who is not going to shy away from a fight, who welcomes the contact, who welcomes being in what old Bulls coach Johnny Bach called the alligator pit down in the lane where you got to fight for boards. I do wonder about the point you made about the players you brought up in terms of Angel Reese's attitude permeating the LSU's team. Were Anissa Morrow at DePaul and Haley Van Lith at Louisville not those kinds of players before? And even if you say, you know, she brought that to a higher level, how much of that do you need from a young player on a team that will have Izzy Harrison, Marina Mabry, and Elizabeth Williams next year? That's the one thing, because I feel like even if you have a good rebounder, we saw that kind of player with in the Indiana Fever when they drafted Emily Enksler, and she didn't end up sticking on the roster. And I think even at number 8, where you can kind of have players who fall off, I think the Sky need both of these players in this draft to really stick on this roster. Again, she has more name recognition from a wider audience than Rikia Jackson does, even if Rikia is the more polished and WNBA ready player. But I think they need somebody who they're going to be able to they need to maximize that rookie contract for all 4 years before they get to that first free agency negotiation.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. And that's where I kind of not necessarily split hairs. I'm a little bit more lenient towards the prospect of Peely on the W level versus the prospect of Reese. And it's not just because of, you know, the things that we just spoke on, but I think it's just when you're building out the roster in addition to drafting, obviously you want to draft for talent, but you also want to have some type of a fit there as well. And I think naturally, like you just spoke to with contracts and what the team is at the moment, it's kind of crowded in the front court with pieces that don't necessarily bring the exact type of defense or versatility or leadership that Angel brings. So this is obviously not a slight at her in any capacity, because I think any team would be lucky to have her as an option for them when their pick comes up in the draft. But I do think that Peely brings something different, because when we get to speaking to the Chicago Sky's roster, I think spacing and I think shooting and I think just general skill from that front court realm is something that they're going to be in dire need of. Obviously, another topic we'll get to, Isabel Harrison being healthy and being available, is going to certainly address that to an extent. I think another way to add to that and to kind of unlock some more for your offense that they're going to certainly need, Alyssa can bring a whole lot of that. And in addition to that, she can also be insulated extremely well defensively with the likes of Dana Evans around her, the likes of Diamond DeShields around her, the likes of Elizabeth Williams being a rim protector, the likes of Breonna Turner being a rim protector. You feel me? So looking at context and fit, Peely would certainly benefit from the likes of the talents that the Sky have defensively. And obviously everybody else would in turn benefit from what she can bring in IQ and presence on offense.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. That's why I was surprised to see our man Mark Schindler just looking at some interesting things he had about prospects for this year and next. He actually had Alyssa Peely going as far as number 22 in the draft to Connecticut, I believe. Now, granted, Mark, I think, is pulling from a wider sample size than we are in terms of just being able to watch both European club basketball and Australian club basketball. And he has some prospects mixed in there at those levels in the top 10 and the top 8. But I still just really like what Peely can do. And I think the one thing that I look for with players who dominate down low with size, right? Do they have the stamina to run 40 minutes in the professional game, in the highest level professional league that we have? And we already talked about the minutes that she's played over the last 4 weeks, the minutes that she's played over the season, pretty much 3/4 of the game. But the way that she scores at 3 levels, and I don't see her as a Megan Gustafson type who had to kind of get whipped into shape coming in, playing overseas, playing AU, and then coming back. And you just saw Megan was in better shape to run up and down the floor, and she's carved out a role for herself as a role player. I think Peely might be a role player too, but I think she's more ready for the pro game and to get ready during the course of a season rather than having to go elsewhere to get herself fit. And I know that I want to be clear on that because it's a touchy subject, just talking about size and weight from my perspective to a women's game. But just that's why I put in that example of Megan Gustafson, because at Iowa, she was far and away the best player in the Big Ten. When she got to the WNBA, she wasn't that roster. And I think Peely is a person who can be in the rotation, even if it's low minutes from the beginning of the season, and then find time at the end.
I agree with everything that you just mentioned, and I think the other part of the context is that looking at the Sky's picks, obviously they have number 3, and then obviously they have number 8, but they also have at the moment. Now, obviously they could potentially trade it, do something else with it, but they have that first pick in the second round, pick number 13. So 8 and 13 are not far from each other in terms of looking at, the order in which players are going to be drafted at. They have opportunity to get some players that might be valued in terms of looking at their prospects as a low first round, even early to mid second round pick. If they feel like a player that's available fits better than others that are available at that pick in the second round, naturally they slot themselves with a perfect opportunity to address that accordingly. And I think that's the beauty in the workshop of a job that Jeff Pagliocca has done in terms of pivoting from trying to add top-end talents in free agency when he first got the job, and not necessarily to appease Kalia Carpenter, but to surround her with talents of a similar level of play, to then pivoting away from all of that and getting the requisite things in exchange for Kalia Copper to facilitate to the roster accordingly. I think they're in a good situation, especially compared to where we potentially saw them initially after the trading of Kalia Copper, and just even before then with draft capital, shall I say. So that's just looking at the beauty of where they're at, that they'll have some optionality. And I think there's far, far, far more ways that they can go right than they can go wrong in this scenario. And again, looking at where they were before versus where they are now, I think this is a good spot to be in, a good pocket. Now it's just time for them to execute and see what comes of it.
And that's really important. They have a lot of options, and they don't have a lot of opportunity to make mistakes here. I think there was less room for error in the past. But you're right. They have 3 picks, 2 of them in the first round, which means they have 3 chances to get a face of the franchise, a quality role player, and then somebody who could be a nice contributor or a team chemistry person or a trade block or a trade piece, when the time comes. A couple of corrections. This is not PTI, but want to do some errors. I said that Rikia Jackson went 51 for 71 over the last 4 weeks. There's actually 41 of 71. And Alyssa Pilley was 37 for 67 over her last 4 games as well. And that's Jada Walker as Region Rev. Our longtime listener from Gary, Indiana, let us know. That's Jada Walker, who's number 11 on Baylor. We want to do some quick housekeeping here and then come back with our final thoughts on the roster, couple of our thoughts on who those 2025 picks could be that we saw over the weekend, and some more interesting news on Izzy Harrison and how that relates to Athletes Unlimited. But first, let us take a quick break here to thank Prize Picks, one of the sponsors of our show. Now, as we talked about last time you saw us, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. And instead of battling pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So, as we said, if you get to the point in the season and you say, Maria Mabry's been hitting it from deep lately, I want to say she's going to make more than 4 threes in the game. Elizabeth Williams has been really cleaning the glass, but she's also defending the rim. Elizabeth Williams, more than 2 blocks. Or if you really want to, you could say, I don't know if Dana Evans is hot or cold right now. I don't know why I picked Dana Evans because this is going to blow back on me real bad. Dana Evans, less than 12 points today. If you put those in and they all hit, you could win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And you could turn $10 into $1,000. Let me say that again. You could turn $10 into $1,000. And that's going WNBA over the summer. That's college basketball, which means it's up right now. NBA and NHL, as they go in the playoff season, and Major League Baseball is in there as well, which means you can do it all summertime long. Plus, for all of you snobs out there, Prize Picks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits, and you can put that money right into your account going into this basketball and baseball season. You can make your picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds, which is almost as much time as we have gone on this ad right now. And they have injury insurance as well. So if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players gets injured, you can't even do that in fantasy sports. So please go to prizepicks.com/CHGO and use the code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CHGO and use that code CHGO. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. And CHGO diehards, man. Stephen, we talked about it already. But the diehards on our show, which Region Rep is one, they are ahead of the game. They're ahead of the game, man.
We appreciate them too.
Most definitely. They got all these events coming up. Yesterday was Blackhawks Takeover at the United Center, which our man Greg Boysen got on the big screen. They said he looked like Stephen Ogg, noted comedian personality. MLB opening weekend is this weekend. Can't believe it's Major League Baseball season already. And the CHGO Sox home opener is going to be at the Ballpark Pub. The away home opener for the team up north, the Cubs, is going to be at the Country Club. And the diehards have access to all the events going on at allchgo.com. So you can check out those post-game shows. You get 20% off tickets for the events. You can see all of Stephen Garner's writings at allchgo.com, and you get a free shirt when you're a member. Free stuff. Free stuff. Can't turn down free stuff.
No, you can't. You also can't turn down unique coverage that comes behind those paywalls as well. Not just from myself, but from other content creators on our network as well. So definitely want to tap in with that and see some of the things that we have to talk about that are certainly worth every penny that you might be putting forth for that diehard membership.
So go on allchgo.com right now and look into becoming a CHGO diehard and check out the amazing selection of merchandise available in the CHGO locker as well. All right, last bits and pieces. Izzy Harrison has been smoking it at AAU play. That's Athletes Unlimited. 115 points on the floor in 159 minutes of play. That's 0.72 points per minute, which for anybody who studies analytics is really, really good. For comparison, Kalani Brown, which was a fan favorite, kind of a possible pickup for anybody who wanted her in free agency, is about 0.64 points per minute. So really good to see Izzy not just back on the floor, not just back healthy, but being very efficient in her play and putting the ball in the basket.
Yes, and for me, it's the manners in which she's going about putting up these points. She averaged almost 13 points in those 4 games in AU that she did play this season. And she played with a point guard in Natasha Cloud, who can certainly get downhill essentially whenever she wants to. And she does it with the mind that she's pulling help away from teammates to ultimately net them with opportunities and shot quality that set them up for success. And you look at what she did in that template, apply that context to who she's going to be playing with on the Chicago Sky. And I think the proposition of the level of play that we're going to see from Izzy Harrison in production and efficiency on top of volume is going to be fun to watch it. I think her paired with Dana Evans in pick and roll, and the way that Dana attracts extra attention, but is also able to engage the extra attention with her prowess as a driver and getting downhill. The perfect complement to that is somebody that can pop and space after screening. That's literally what Izzy's been doing with great comfortability off of Natasha Cloud. And to see her execute to the volume at which we've seen on efficiency, it really speaks to where she is and the work she's been putting in. So I'm really intrigued by seeing how that pairing and just generally Izzy individually reintegrates herself into W play. But I think there's a template there, and I think there's something that's very much repeatable, even on potentially more volume.
Most definitely. Now, this was last month, about this time in February, but ESPN announced a partnership with Athletes Unlimited, where they'll be showing a multitude of their games across 4 sports, including basketball, softball, volleyball, and lacrosse. And this is big time, especially because I think of the 152 games that they're showing, 126 games, only 14 of those are going to be on ESPN Plus, which means only 14 of those 126 games you'll need an additional membership for, as long as you have access to either cable or streaming where you can watch ESPN. But a lot of those games are going to be on ESPN's regular networks, whether that's ESPN, ESPN2, either the flagships, or ESPN News or College, anything that you have access to on your regular TV. And that runs from the basketball season, which started in February, to the pro volleyball season, which ends in November. This is really big for women's sports, and I think can only help get eyes not just on women's sports in general, but players who, in terms of basketball, might not be able to make a WNBA roster immediately or stick as much, but also those other sports we mentioned that don't get a lot of screen coverage.
Yeah, I think that viewership, which is kind of something that we talked about with the W last season, and just having it accessible to the in location market, and just people that generally just want to watch. I think that just as a foundation, as a baseline, is extremely important. And to see them continue to take the strides that they are to the accessibility portion and checking that box off is extremely important. And I'm very much happy to see it. I think women's sports naturally need to be more elevated in terms of the eyes that they're able to get on it, for it to not be as restricted as it used to be, and to see the steps that's been taken since, it's been good. So great step in the right direction. I'm hoping to see even more.
Me too. And you think about, especially for softball, which has gotten a lot more traction since the College World Series has been aired on ESPN. The National Pro Fast Pitch League folded a couple of years ago, but the Chicago Bandits they won 3 championships over those 16 years the league was in operation. And they had one of the most recognizable and notable players in softball history in Jenny Finch.
Shout out, Jenny. Yes, sir.
She was there's a story that she went to, I think, a MLB All-Star practice and struck out Barry Bonds.
Mm-hmm. I still remember when she was in the Celebrity All-Star game and she was striking everybody out left and right.
Oh, she was dogging folks, man.
she was one of a kind, and she obviously advocated for all of women's sports, but especially the softball realm too.
So you have a player like Jocelyn Allo that got out of Oklahoma after hitting everything out of sight, like the new Josh Gibson. You got to have that player on TV. Like, even if you're not a fan of homers, if you're not a fan of Oklahoma, as a player, you absolutely have to have on TV. We come about to the end of our show. Want to highlight one last comment we got from A. Haling. Shout out to everybody who tuned into the show. But A. Haling 0222, Chicago Sky will have to address the elephant in the room at the center spot. Nobody hasn't talked about Rikia Jackson at the Kansas, and that's really interesting. Kansas was on Monday's series of games in the finals of the second round of this year's tournament. And I did take a look at Rikia Jackson, and she's interesting. I think just in her story, there's more to uncover here because I don't know if she's really been on anybody's draft boards, but this could be somebody interesting for the Sky. She's 2-time All Big 12, 3-time Big 12 All Defense. She is an East Chicago, Indiana product, same as one of CHGO Sky's favorite players. And she's 6'6", which means that she could, as the Dallas Wings and other teams kind of cement themselves in that playoff picture, be a piece that could offer some resistance to players like Tierra McCowan and really a lot of other players that are coming in at height and strength. The one thing that concerns me is that she only logged 3 college seasons and looks like she was a redshirt senior this year. But in terms of defensively, she had over 2 win shares per game in each of her 3 college seasons. Do you think that, if there's a dark horse, she could be it? Or if there's just the Sky, we have pretty much who the Sky are going to pick outside of that number 13 spot?
I would personally be surprised at this moment in time if they went with a center with one of the picks, just because obviously you already have E. Will, one of the best rim protectors in the W. And then in addition to that, by way of the trading of Kalia Copper, now you also have Breezy Turner behind E. That's a lot of defense. That's a lot of versatility that they can provide. And I don't know, it just feels like there's slightly more pressing needs at the moment for the roster, just kind of looking at where things are at the moment. And I feel like if they address the things that are lacking on that wing a little bit more specifically with this draft in terms of the crop of talent that's around, I think naturally with them having picks to come, like Chris keeps hinting at, 2025 and beyond, will net them with opportunities to address that center position with maybe more talent in terms of volume to look at, and then also where contracts are and all of that fun stuff as well. I think those things are important to note. But I do think that at the moment in time, they're decent with where they're at center at the moment with E. Will and Breezy Turner. And I also think another little thing in that is them potentially going small ball and moving Izzy to that 5 against certain teams and maybe in certain moments over the course of games, speed up play, add a little bit more versatility, 5-out spacing, all of those little things.
Appreciate Zach the Potato on that comment. They should get Georgia Amore, the center, Virginia Tech that got injured. That's Elizabeth Kitley. Going to be interesting to see where Elizabeth Kitley falls after that ACL injury. I think, honestly, with the way things are going, she might take some time in Athletes Unlimited to get her win back over the recovery time. But that's just about going to do it from us. Last little bit, watch that Virginia Tech game if you didn't get a chance to watch it. Watch that NC State versus
Tennessee.
Watch that NC State versus Tennessee game, man. Sanaya Rivers and Isaiah James for NC State are 2 names that you are going to see on your 2025 draft boards. And after a teaspoon gets everything, the foundation laid, I think if the Sky are in the lottery, those are two names that are going to come up. For our producer, Stephen Nicholas, for the best X's and O's man, this side of the Mississippi, Stephen Garner, StateUS.3. I am Quandary Kitten, Chris Pennant. Follow us on CHGO_Sky. Until next time, folks, be good, do great things, and keep your head all the way above the clouds.
We all silly like the mayor.